I think it would be nice
Yeah.
to get those things done. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for the innovation discussions that we are having this January, there's actually a channel dedicated to that. Can you
Okay,
see
can you
my
send me?
screen?
Yes, I can see your screen, but can you send me the link to the Slack group so I can join?
Okay,
I know it's been a while.
let me do that now because at least you could have some reference information here.
Mhm.
Okay. So I actually took the opportunity to read the book. The what is that book again? Is it Business Strategy with AI or something like that?
Yeah.
So I read it. Yeah, it was quite an interesting read. I read maybe about maybe 50, 100 pages.
Yeah, it's actually eye opening. And then there's one human plus AI that just got out from some consultant from
Okay.
Accenture, and they gave a very thought provoking rebuttal to already existing knowledge
Uh-huh.
about the existence of AI in a lot of all of our human endeavors. And
Yeah.
that in itself, I kind of subscribe to that line of thought because it's quite. I mean, when people hear the word AI, it's kind of quite, uh, like the Reaper is coming to take away all your jobs and whatnot. And I think that's what is in the general consensus. But this gentleman actually put it from a different perspective that AI is to augment the human endeavors, not
Exactly.
to take away from it. But and that's what we're going to talk about. I mean, from my perspective, of what I've seen and what is going on over here. And I think I'm going to pivot a little bit because I'm going to add the AI, the space of artificial intelligence and supply chain to my repertoire right now because I'm doing a lot of work and research on it and find it quite interesting because the more you talk to a lot of professionals in the space of supply chain, the more uh, they really don't want to talk about it for some strange reasons, you know. And I don't know why because it kind of enhances a lot of their work. But
Yeah.
they, of course, they said it's gonna, all these menial tasks is gonna be gone, which you don't really need much of people to be educated to do those menial tasks. So I really want people to. I mean, there's so much that can be done with AI. There's so much that is going to expand the world of procurement
Exactly.
and every endeavor in the supply chain, the whole from cradle to grave. But people are not actually open to it, and
Okay.
actually, is that I mean, it's increasing the service based. Like now, we have more programmers, more data analysts actually working in the supply chain field more than anything else. So there is
Mhm.
expanding a lot more. And I always tell people, look, if you want to be relevant in supply chain, I think you should add data analytics. I think you should add coding into your this. Be like, oh, this mathematics. Like, look, it's the way of the world. The world is opening up in such a strange manner these days that if you're not equipped with those skill set, you're gonna be irrelevant. So to actually buttress this point, this week about five, I helped some guys sort out some job opportunities, and what they're asking for people that are supply chain analysts, they're asking them to know how to code. They're asking them to know how to do correlations of data to be able to, clean data. That's like, wow, this is quite interesting. This
Yeah.
is this is the future of supply chain. This is it. And if we don't get it now, if we don't get entrenched in it, we're going to be left behind. And it's it's crazy because I'm looking at it. 37%, only 37% of most Fortune 500 companies and beyond have actually thought of digitizing their supply chain, and that's pretty damn alarming. You
Yeah.
know, most people haven't thought about it; they just don't see the need for it.
Mm.
But they're going to be left behind. It's the way of
Yeah.
the world. They're
So
just going
so
to be left
this
behind.
this reminds me of when internet came newly, right?
Yes. Yeah.
People couldn't just really figure out, okay, what is really the point? Is it just all about the emails, and after that, what? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but we can see right now that this thing just kind of blew up in our face. And even at that time when internet still came in newly, we were basically working with the obsolete materials and curriculum in the school. So it was just a lot of catching up. Even for those people who were able to acquire these skills later, it was a major catch up they had to do in order to be able to, use those technologies. I remember schools where they are teaching computer technology, and pretty much they really have no clue, what they're talking about. It's just theoretical, that.
You
But
probably
yeah,
still teach them Fortran 77 or something of that nature.
I'm Pascal maybe.
Yeah.
And COBOL.
And COBOL, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
it's such a, and the thing about it is the use of machine learning, the use of I was talking to someone yesterday about the data. The data, what we are. A lot of companies they got it wrong, and they are actually positioning themselves. But for you to be first of all, the first thing that most organizations need to do right now, and people that actually get it, they actually pivot in that way,
yeah.
is to position themselves as a technological company providing supply chain services.
Yeah.
Because that is the baseline of it all. Because right now, to be competitive in today's market, you have to be technological savvy in everything you do, unless you're not going to be able to grab that market share. It's just the way of it's just, that is factual.
Exactly.
So the inability to be able to use the data that you are harnessing from your transactions is nobody's fault but yours. As I was explaining something yesterday, even humans, our DNA is our data.
Yeah.
And the pattern at which we work. To be honest with you, that is why this whole machine learning and artificial intelligence works, because it's pattern driven. So everything we do as human, or every task we do, is all pattern driven. So the moment that pattern can be studied and can be modeled, the rest is history.
Okay, so I'll jump in there.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what? Let me just do a quick introduction of you to the other guys.
Okay.
You're welcome, Dolapo. I see you're in, and I see I don't know why I keep forgetting your name. The last time too, I was okay, Caleb. Okay, I don't want to say a wrong name. He's Caleb. So we have Adebayo Adeleke in joining us today as a guest. If you are in the WhatsApp group, you probably would have seen some of his comments. The WhatsApp group is it's been existing for quite a long time. I think 2015, and I know at that time I was able to get in touch with Adebayo Adeleke. By the way, he's an ex-US Army, right?
Yes.
I get that. Yeah, so we're really lucky to have you as a mentor in our group. Because I could imagine the experience and the exposure, at some point, I think we had this discussion where we had made mention of, okay, having you to be the go-to person for anything global, trend, in terms of all the trades and all those things happening.
Yes.
I also do recollect that you were supposed to also do some kind of I actually am supposed to do that to get you to do some interview for us as a mentor in the group.
Yes, I'm still tracking that.
Okay.
As part of my one thing that my deliverables to you this first quarter.
Okay.
So I'm doing the editing. I don't like it, so I'm redoing it. So what is what doing is what doing well.
Okay.
So I will say there.
Okay. So just let me jump in here. I remember vividly when we had some discussion. I don't know if you remember this. You told me you were working on some supply chain model.
Yes.
I had some exchanges with you in terms of what my own visions are in terms of what a supply chain model should be and what should be the
Yes, I
emerging.
remember we had that conversation. Yes.
So you remember I told you that what I see is a model that is already existing in nature. So now
you mentioned it. You mentioned it. Yeah, it's quite very, very parallel.
Yeah.
That's true. Actually, I'm glad you reminded me. Yeah.
So when I read about artificial intelligence today, even though the vision I had was very blurry, I actually drafted something. I remember you were saying, okay, can you show me this stuff and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
today, really, that vision that I saw is what I'm seeing right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, because to be honest with you, all this thing is nature driven. I'm one of the books I'm going to be writing. God, if I have the grace sometime later this year or the bandwidth, is called Changing Formations, and the concept behind it is the fact that nothing is actually new. Nothing is crazily new. Everything that we're going through, even this issue of artificial intelligence, has always been around us. It's just that we are actually finding it out now. So the issue of the pattern of formation is, if you look from the sports to human lives to microorganisms to birds, they actually work in formations. So you can actually be very good. You can have great talent, but if you're formed wrongly, you're gonna be losing all day long. But you can have minimal talent, and if you form right, you're gonna form. You can have a formidable team. So, and my own postulation was, I think we should be teaching ourselves how to recognize formations, disruptions, and select which formation can counter it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the same thing when the birds, so I'm trying to kind of relate with you on the issue of what goes on in the nature. When the birds, right, the school of fishes, when they migrate from one part of the country to the other, they do it in formations. And the reason why they do it in formation is to conserve energy, to do all this kind of stuff. And the same thing is actually what is being used in artificial intelligence, all this destruction that we're finding out. I'm telling you, it's mind blowing how nature is teaching us how to be normal, how to actually be competitive in today's world.
Yeah, which takes me to the discussion about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I posted some resources here. I already sent you a link, but I'm not sure if you're
Okay.
able to
No,
look.
I'm looking at the
Okay.
the Slack page right now, so I'll yes,
So
yeah.
so artificial intelligence system basically will typically demonstrate at least some of the characteristics that are associated with human intelligence. Okay, so basically, these are the type of skills we're talking about. So because there's some discussions we had previously before now. The last time we talked about the robotic process automation,
Yeah.
RPA. So we had some discussions around, okay, what are the type of skills that professionals in supply chain need to acquire right now that we're talking about artificial intelligence. And when I look at this definition of what artificial intelligence is,
Mm-hmm.
basically it's a simulation of human intelligence. Is what I take away
Yep.
from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you ride on. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You ride on with it, because artificial intelligence is based on, to be honest with you, the primary baseline, the building block of artificial intelligence is data. And
Yeah.
who gives the data is humans. And we humans give the data. Data doesn't just this, woke up one morning and say, you know what, I am data. Actually, we actually produce those data. So it's the pattern of life of humans that's been actually modeled, so that we're very predictive in nature. Everything we do, from the way we think to the way we layers everything and the way we do certain things, is actually, it can be predictable. So, but the thing is that we don't see it on a day-to-day basis. We think that we are not predictable. We think that certain things, but people that actually, the psychologists and everything that have done studies over the course of time, can tell us that if you do certain things, it's because you're thinking this way. And this is because they've studied data over the course of time. Data has always been there, but we've never been able to use it as a competitive edge. But now, ability to predict, ability to prescribe, as it's now the thing of, is the in thing. And if you cannot do that, you're gonna be like I said earlier, you're gonna be kind of extinct in the way you do business. So your primary question is that, what are the skill set that is required in this age of artificial intelligence. And I mentioned it briefly. I don't know if anyone was listening. I mean, when we started this whole thing, that this past week I was helping someone with filling in some slots on supply chain one. To be honest with you, what everyone is asking right now, if you're into IT world, you know, trying to fill people for AWS and Azure and everything, and they realize that they want you to know almost everything. They want the person that they want to hire to have all the skill sets in this world, which is probably impossible to have. The same thing goes for supply chain. If I'm hiring a supply chain analyst today that's going to work in my organization, the supply chain analyst must understand the nature of data, how to use data to build machine learning, how to build different models, how to do simulations and whatnot. Because the person is of no use for me. Because any other thing else is obsolete at this moment. Your inability to be able to use data to kind of predict sales, use demand data to predict sales and all this kind of thing. If you cannot do that for me, then to be honest with you, then why am I paying you? You know, I mean, absolutely, why am I paying you? Because I can hire somebody from high school, teach him basic supply chain knowledge, and the guy will be shining like a rock star. But for us to be competitive these days, and for us to be able to actually lean forward to what is going on what's going to be going on in the nearest future, we have to kind of harness those skills. So ability to learn Python, like for example, last year I learned data science. Did a crash course on data science. I understand how to use Python for data science and whatnot. Why do I need to? It's not like I'm going to be a technician, punching numbers. But I need to understand so that when I tell someone in my organization that I believe this can be done, I want you to do this for me. So the person knows that I know what I'm talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm from a position in the managerial position. I don't have to be technical, but I definitely know what I want out of my technicians. So today, I learned Python. I understand correlation, how to clean data, how to kind of, what data works without, how to, all those kind of different stuff that goes with data science. And I'm not really deep dive in it, but I know enough to be dangerous. And I understand that.
Thank you. Yeah. So I remember you mentioned when we started earlier, you mentioned data analytics.
Yes.
So if anybody basically wants to equip themselves for future procurement management opportunities, that will be data analytics will be very, very important. Yeah, I also know that there are some other skills that are actually connected with this. Now, you talked about the Python, which is basically a programming skill. So now we're saying that, for you to be a supply chain analyst, you need to have a programming skill. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I know Python is the one that is common. There's also R. I think there's one other one, I can't remember that name, but I know R and Python actually are the most popular programming skills for data.
Yes, there's Java. They do JavaScript now, yeah.
Okay. Then I also know, the one they call storytelling, which is basically visualization.
Yes, Tableau and those guys.
Yeah, Tableau and, all those visualization things.
Power BI.
Pardon?
Power BI.
Power BI, okay, which is an Excel thing, right?
Yes, it's a Microsoft tool.
Okay. So, but all of this, we know when we talk about supply chain, because really we're looking as to how do we move forward as a supply chain profession. The one thing I always remember is when ERP came in, a lot of people put ERP into the IT box, okay? And then we shipped it up to consulting companies, the management consulting firms, which I would say that it's the nature of procurement, because this is really what we have been preaching. We say, okay, you know what, focus on your core competence, okay? So the core competence of supply chain management and procurement Is this going to shift as a result of all these things happening?
Yeah, it's not going to shift. Those core competence is still going to be there. Now, what is going to be required of supply chain professionals is not only to be supply chain professionals, but also to be value professionals. You are driving value for your organization. And with that being said, because that's what's going to require of us, because this idea of supply chain is morphing into value proposition down the road. So how do I, because now the way value is being kind of viewed in most organizations is through supply chain. So now they're looking to supply chain folks to be able to drive value. So the ability to add all those the new skill set is to complement the already existing one, because those skill sets that you already have, the core competencies are not going away. And actually, the moment you learn in a good supply chain professional, the moment you learn all these new additional skills, a light bulb should actually turn on, and you realize that how can I merge this new skill with my core competencies and drive value for the organization? Am I making any sense? Because the moment you understand how to clean the data, the moment you understand how to correlate data, which one, things will start speaking to you from your own competency. Like, wow, look at this. I can see this. I can see that. Look at the trend. I can do trend analysis. Like, wow, this is how I can help my organization to actually streamline whatever money they're spending and drive value. So that is why it is quite important for us to be relevant, because we will be providing value for the organization. That's why it is important. Those skills are not going away, absolutely. But these new skills will help enhance the already gotten skills to make us more value driven.
Great. So going back to what we talked about earlier about supply chain model. Of course, everybody who is here this morning, remember the Porter's supply value chain, okay, which is a linear
model,
right?
Yes.
So given all of this, what we are hearing right now, what I hear from you right now is that is obsolete. We no longer,
for the most part,
we no longer have,
I mean, we don't operate in the linear networks.
Exactly. So which goes to there's a question I would then like to ask you. Because for everyone who is hearing all of this and who is listening to the news and hear about artificial intelligence every time, the question probably then might be, okay, why must artificial intelligence be applied in or be adapted into a supply chain?
It is because for us to be, like I said, it makes our work cleaner, and it makes us to be more, I put it in my previous answer, is the fact of value. Because things that we know for sure, and I'll explain this, I'm getting somewhere with this. Remember we spoke about linear versus network in our previous conversation that we had, and you mentioned it today, and I'll tell you the reason why. So a few months ago, I had the opportunity of consulting at Facebook and Google on their procurement.
Okay.
And I'll tell you this, Facebook and Google and most of these high-tech companies, they pivoted from the original or the known knowledge of supply chain. Cost is not their competitive advantage for them, which everyone that has worked in supply chain for 10, 15 years, we know that everything we do is all about cutting costs, right? But for them, it took me, I was there for 3 days. It took me like hours. I was talking to this guy. Every time I say we have to cut costs, they're like, nope, we're not cutting costs. They have to constantly remind me, and I have to take a day, like, what is going on over here? Like, everything I know as a supply chain professional is being challenged here. But who am I to tell Google, Facebook that they're not doing it right? The only thing that they haven't figured out how to perfect the method they're using. The moment they perfect the method they're using, it's going to revolutionize the whole supply chain industry. And that is, cost is not a factor. It's all about value.
Exactly.
Cost is not a factor, because right now it's like, how much is going to cost? We don't care. We don't care how much it's going to cost. We just want to be. So for Facebook and Google, is about getting to the market first.
Yeah.
That is their value.
Speed.
It's about getting to the market first. Speed. Break it or something. I forgot the slang they use in Facebook. Break it until it go fast until it breaks or something like that. And I was like, what kind of slang is that? But it actually works for them, because that is how they drive value. Because Facebook said they are pace setters, they're trend setters. The moment Facebook does it, somebody else will do it again. And the same thing with Google. Money is not an issue. And the way things are going, money will never be an issue for elite supply chain, because what they're driving at is way, way better than cutting costs.
Yeah. So we are go on.
To help them streamline their procurement. So I'm to streamline their procurement process, because Mark Zuckerberg gave every one of them ability to order, like just whatever you need, just order it, and then they figure out they have some issues. You can't just order anything you need. I mean, it doesn't work there. You know,
Interesting.
They don't. He doesn't want to siphon them. Their inability to. They should be able to get whatever they want to get value. But the issue is, it becomes a nightmare, procurement nightmare. Everybody has the authority to buy anything. I think less than $50,000. We're like, look, this will not work. So that's why we help them to kind of shape up their procurement processes. The reason why I brought this up is the fact of the issue of value. The issue of value, because the reason why all this artificial intelligence is required in procurement is because what customers will be asking of procurement and supply chain these days is of value that only people that are tech savvy will be able to deliver. And if you're not tech savvy, or technology or artificial intelligence is not embedded in your supply chain processes or your digital footprint, one will fail, and there's no absolutely redemption to that. So that is why it is important, because imagine, before you go to a negotiation table, you already have all the data of the price, cost analysis and everything for the past 20 years or so, and somebody else doesn't have a clue. You've already permitted it, make sure you did the trend analysis and everything. You know to the exact cent how much this thing is going to cost. How much do you have as a competitive advantage as you're on the negotiation table? Absolutely, you have all the chips in your hand. So things are changing in the realm if we use technology to enhance the already known body of knowledge to supply chain. I hope I made any sense. So. Hello?
Yeah, so that's great. What I'm getting at here also, I really appreciate that commentary, because there was this particular document that I read, and what they actually recommended there in terms of the future supply chain was really counterintuitive. You know, basically when you look at the way we have been taught supply chain. Because what they are getting at is that actually the future of supply chain is decentralized.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's what I'm kind of interested, because you mentioned that Facebook actually gave their staffs the ability to place orders.
So you and I talk about linear and network supply chain. We've deviated from the linear networks. The linear equations are not. So in a network and very complex supply chain, the complexities in our supply chain these days are so enormous. We have globalization. We have all kind of business going on. You cannot, in a centralized format, you cannot control it. Imagine me in America telling people in China we must ship stuff when they're going through this coronavirus. It doesn't work that way. You cannot anticipate what is going on in different regions. You have to let those regions take care of themselves. And the moment you decentralize the stuff, there are certain things that you still have to centralize, though, your processes that actually drive value for you. You have to make sure, regardless of whatever you do, make sure that you drive value out of it. You cannot, the moment you centralize supply chain in this age, it's unheard of. And actually, for you, it's very archaic, because only linear actually does that.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm getting at here now is that for a lot of organizations that are actually still practicing uh, centralization based on the original supply chain model that we know about, which is a linear supply chain model. Basically, they are running, a model that is now obsolete. So
Absolutely.
which brings us to the fact that, well, this is the reason why artificial intelligence now becomes very critical component of a modern supply chain, whereby it is self-regulating, because what if you look at what we do where when we centralize procurement or supply chain, what we have is a situation where we don't have a clue, just like you were saying. There are stuff happening all over the place. There are a lot of complexities, a lot of constraints, a lot of variables, and now we are still trying to centralize when we really don't even have the data, that we could use to actually manage those type of situations. So it just becomes inefficient, unmanageable scenario. Because I've experienced this. I mean, myself managing supply chain, and I realized that even my customers, for the most part, are unsatisfied, with the type of services I'm providing, because I'm not responding at the speed that they want, just because
Exactly.
there's so much there's so many rules, even rules that they wouldn't really understand. Okay, what is going on here? Why do we have this rule? They don't really want those type of rules, because what they are working on is of utmost importance to them. These are guys working in innovation, science, and they don't care about all these things that we're talking about, cutting costs and all that. It's none of their business. They just want to basically they want to create stuff. That's all that is important to them. So which brings me to the challenge for the supply chain of the future here is this, that it's gonna those days basically where we think it's all about cutting costs. Like you said, you talk about the value.
Yeah.
Value to me then will be it will depend on the organization or the environment. Now you talk about Facebook. Apparently, there are some objectives that are important to them as in
Mhm.
terms of business, and there are a lot of different organizations whose the value that drives the kind of activities they are engaged in are all different. It's not a commodity-based type of approach, and definitely then supply chain needs to be able to adapt to all these different requirements and all this you know and business environment where different things are required. So which boils down to the what I mentioned earlier, the linear supply chain model is dead, basically.
It is. And if you do your mapping, supply chain mapping, so there's a thing I don't know if I share with you that we're working on the supply chain risk management. You made mention of something that uh, with the use of artificial intelligence is self-regulating. Absolutely, because in the network supply chain, and we use it in the military a lot. They call it the mission command concept, whereby somebody on the ground, you have eyes on what is going on in your region. I'm giving you every authority to act, as long as whatever you're doing is kind of nested into our overall goal, and that's it. That's all I have to know.
Yeah.
Because, like for example, when we look at the riot that happened in Hong Kong, that's almost 6 months long. Imagine that, me sitting in Singapore telling them that we must continue to work. No, you can't tell them you can go. People don't even have time to go to work. They're over there protesting. So you have to understand all these nuances. And it's quite impressive that the linear supply. But the thing is, what is going on in the outside world is so rapidly moving that the curriculum and the body of knowledge is finding it hard to catch up.
Mm.
This issue of the issue of decentralization is going to be much more down the road. I mean, the way guys are doing it, the tech industry have decentralized to the extent that it works best for us, and for us to understand. So to understand this issue of artificial intelligence. So we're working on this risk management tool that I told you, right?
Yeah.
So in ability, so for example now, and I'll tell you what actually prompted this solution that we're developing. Is the fact of the matter, during this Trump election, right, in 2016, a lot of people were still under the old linear network, whereby we just wait when Trump gets into power and see what is going. But only few organizations actually took the sound bite of Trump during his campaign. That, you know what, if I win the presidency, I'm gonna tear up NAFTA. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that.
Mm.
You know, those guys only are sold about 2 or 3 companies were able to go back to their drawing board and they permutated different scenarios. Different scenarios in case Trump wins the election and he does this, he does that. How do we position ourselves competitively? You know that, right? Actually, they were doing one laughing right now in the last 1.5 years during the China issues with the United States,
Yeah.
the whole tariff war, right? They were able to capitalize on it because they already projected because the rest of all the other companies were waiting. Don't worry, when it gets into office, you understand that these are just campaign promises and whatnot. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Guess what? I mean, all these issues, the farmers and all those guys that were waiting, they actually found them. A lot of them lost a lot of money. But the people that were able to permutate, like, what if this guy actually go full throttle on his promises made on the campaign trail? How are we going to be? How are we going to
Respond, eh?
how do we put ourselves as a competitive? How do we respond to it? And they did it, and they were able to come up with some 1 or 2 different methods, and they were able to compete differently. The same thing with Apple. You know, everything that was going on with all these things, Apple never actually wavered in this whole process of tariff. Actually, they came out smelling. I mean, they came out smelling like roses at the end of it all because they understand the nuances. They were able to come. Okay, if Trump wins the election, what is going to happen? What is going to, and that part of risk management is lacking in our supply chain.
Okay.
Inability to predict, to use some of those nuances that happen in the geopolitical world to kind of predict those kind of things. And it's a very deep, complex network supply chain that only at the use of artificial intelligence, sound bites from Facebook, from all these campaign trail combining together to form different kind of algorithms to kind of predict how this is, and it actually worked. So things are moving and changing in the realm, and you know, and we are just a lot of people are playing catch up, whereby the real smart ones are already leaning forward. Okay, this is what's going to happen. Okay, what people are Trump is not going to win the next election. Okay, what if he wins? What's going to happen? You know, and people are already predicting different scenarios, and that's how you have to lean forward. If not, you're gonna get caught with your pants down.
Yeah, so I think at this moment we get it. But you know what? I'm gonna open the line for the guys to actually respond to some of this. So basically, right now, based on what you just said right there, artificial intelligence is like the future, even for supply chain management and for any business for that matter, because the thing is this, we as human beings, we have limitations on how we can basically do all of these permutations you're talking about. How many permutations can we handle in a second or even for a whole day? You know, but these machines can handle millions of permutations and
Yes.
then be able to detect trends, you know, of what can happen even maybe next year or in 2 years' time. I guess that's really for me what kind of crystallizes the need for the supply chain, the modern supply chain, to actually then adapt to becoming actually an artificial intelligence. But I would leave it open for the other group members to ask. Maybe they have questions. I'm gonna open the line for them now. So I would actually suggest that you raise your hand if you would like to comment. I have Caleb here, I have Dolapo here, I have Yesterday here, and I have Sean also here. If you guys can, you know, if you have concerns or if you have any question regarding what we have been saying so far, that'll be great. So Caleb.
Thanks a lot, Adeleke, for what you've said so far. It's pretty. You've expanded on so many things. I just have a few questions. Good enough. What I love more is what you have like case studies to be able to follow through, and we're not talking about hypothetical situations. We're talking about what is actually happening. Now, you made mention of before I ask my question, you said there's an article you're expecting. Is it from Accenture or what's that consultancy group or so, right?
Oh, there's a book. There's a book on Human, you can Google it, Human Plus AI or something like that. It just is a new book published actually out of
Sorry?
is revolutionizing supply chain. Actually, it's very powerful book, and that's what Azure has been able to do with some of their consulting work. I think you should get it. You will like it.
What's the name of the book?
Yeah,
Is it the one you posted on the WhatsApp group chat?
not that one. I posted another one on. It's called Humans Plus AI.
Okay.
I will post it. I'll post it on the WhatsApp group. I'll post
Okay.
the book.
Okay.
You can just order it on Amazon there.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Then two things that came to my mind is this. You said you had conversation with Facebook and Google. Can you give us an idea of the value chain that they are really targeting or looking at? Because it looks pretty broad. Practically, I think every company, what they're looking at the end of the day is what value they are offering to their customers, and the customers pay for those values. So can you give us an idea of what it is in terms of how the supply chain is shaping their thinking? Yes, they are not thinking about cost, but what is the value that you could see that they are chasing, that they want to put into their system to improve their system?
Okay.
Were you able to extrapolate that from your conversation with them?
Yeah. So we went on the consulting work with them, and this is rather proprietary for them, but I'm willing to share certain areas that is not really too crazy. So what they're doing, for example, I'll share some things with you. They have a database of tens of thousands of suppliers because of the way Mark Zuckerberg want to operate his supply chain is that everybody has authority to buy. Remember, so Google has to rely on people. They don't have their own, they're not vertically integrated, so to say, so they have to rely on their own, they have to rely on people. So they have about a database of tens of thousands of suppliers that supply to them. And then since now people have authority to order. If I'm a tech guy, I'm working on something, and I found somebody that did it, I can just tell the guy, I'm going to buy this stuff. So and then comes hundreds of thousands of invoices. Then how would they be able to work? So they came up with something whereby they can scan invoices. The invoice is going to match the procurement, PO, and everything, and they make payment for the guy, and the guy is gone. And it's quite interesting in the process because that's what we came up with them, because essentially that's actually involved in the whole process. Because how can you have tens of thousands of suppliers? First of all, it doesn't even make sense. How do you categorize them? We introduced category management for them, but they were able to take only certain parts of the principles of category management because they figure that the rest of them doesn't really apply to them. And I understand them from that perspective as well. Because most of these things are archaic, to be honest with you, unless because they are in the service business, they're not in the product business. So I understand that. But for them, cost is never an issue because their value and ability is to get the newest technology to people through Facebook. And if they can do that, if somebody else, it drives their own market. Not so, does that make sense? It drives their own market. So let's say somebody found a new technology that be incorporated into Facebook that can do certain things. Facebook rather have the person, pay the person, get the person to work on some of these add-ons on Facebook and get it to people first. Because they will get more market, more drive for them than to lose that opportunity to other social media platform. I hope you get what I'm saying. So for them, how do procurement support that initiative is, drive fast until it breaks, and that's how they're doing. So they want everything they want to do, they want to be the first to do it. And that's what drives them, and that is their own value proposition. So how do the procurement, because the current procurement system that they have is not supporting, because by the time the invoice comes, it doesn't match with the PO, it kind of slows down the whole process. And of course, they can't get to market as fast as possible. So we came there to kind of see how we can match their POs and their so-called crazy databases of invoices. And then we can, now you guys, because if suppliers are not paid, they're not lifting a finger, So the ability for us to be able to make that happen for them actually help them out tremendously.
Okay. Now my last question is this: are we safe to say now that because Google and Facebook are not driven so much by cost, but by value, and they are decentralizing the supply chain system. That will be what the future is for supply chain, or is just specific to just Facebook and Google, so to speak, because those companies are pretty large and pretty large compared to so many other companies that are out there that might be involved in supply chain management. So are we saying that
So,
will be a template for everybody, or just a specific thing that
so
applies to them?
let me say this. I would say it will vary. The method they're using is going to be impactful on supply chain. For it to be a general accepted way of doing business or general accepted body of knowledge, everybody has to buy off on it. And I don't think currently we have enough. Most people would not like to buy off on it because it's quite expensive. But this is what I would say. Even Google and Facebook, they've not actually perfected this whole thing. They're still working the kinks out. But this is what I'll tell you. Once this method of their procurement and the way they do supply chain is perfected, I think it will be a force to reckon with. I mean, honestly. Because why will I? I mean, I'll just close my eyes, bite the bullet, and I'll cost as long as the value drives more. As long as the value drive more revenue for me. Because I was talking to someone, he said, I was talking to his business and the supply. Just said I made over 1.1 million. I said, wow. If you look at that, you'd be like, wow, that's for a small business. Wow. Until he told me how much he used in advertisement. And I was like, wow, he used almost $800,000 in advertisement. And he makes about 1.1 million. I was hoping that the expenses is like 300,000. I said, wow, this guy really did well, But until he mentioned he did about 800,000, I'm like, wow, will you do that? But for him, that makes sense to him, It's a different line of thinking. And I think the same line of thinking for Facebook, and it's like, look, we don't know, we don't care how much it costs us because they can afford it as long as we get to the market first, And like I said, the system is not perfect, actually far from it. But I believe the moment they perfect the system, it will be a
Yeah, thank you, Adeleke. I actually want to add to that because I believe that the question that Caleb is asking
Mhm.
is something that I should also respond to, which is one of the reasons why we're having discussions anyways. In the sense,
Okay.
we know that Google, Facebook, basically these guys are like the type of business model that they have might support those type of decisions, those type of business decisions. But you know what? In
Mhm.
supply chain of today, the reality here is this: that traditional operating model that actually supports all this cost cutting that supply chain has been shouting about for the last how many years now, it's going to end. That is just it. So even if we say that Facebook and Google basically not your what do we call that now? They're kind of a extreme situation where we know the type of business these guys are running probably might give them that need to based on value rather than on cost. The reality of what is going on in the industry is that for the industry 4.0, the traditional operating model is not going to work anymore. We're going to have a digital operating model. When I say digital operating model, we're talking about Amazon. So Amazon actually has done that, and in terms of talking about the context now, which is procurement, they have a running operating model for their supply chain. And you see a lot of things that they have implemented. They've implemented all these technologies we're talking about. Pretty much, they've implemented artificial intelligence, where maybe if you've gone to Amazon and you're buying some stuff, you would see that there are also some suggestion about what one other person ordered that is similar to what you order, and the machine in the back end is able to suggest something to you that you never even thought of, but just because of the neural networks that are working in the background, is able to predict that this guy is gonna buy this stuff. So they're already using That's our digital operating model right there for you. So we're saying that in the future, for the modern supply chain management, this is going to be a reality. But for now, okay, maybe guess what? A lot of organizations are not doing that. They are still operating their traditional operating model. Guess what happened to Sears? Okay, so Sears, apparently they had to declare bankruptcy just because they did not respond appropriately to these things that are happening around them. Okay.
And to caveat to that, you know, a few years back, if they tell me that people will be looking for one day, few hours delivery, I would say no. People will wait or rather go to the store. But that is changing because this supply chain and this not only changing, but it's changing the consumer behavior as well. Now, if you go on Amazon, people are expecting not to get their stock tomorrow, but they expect to get it today. And that in itself is pushing. And I don't know if this what's going on in Canada, but in the US, that is pushing a lot of stuff. You can see a lot of warehouses, a lot of just warehouses just popping up left, right, and center because now the United States as a whole is building a framework to start actually delivering within a day. And with that, of course, there's going to be costs associated with it. People are willing to buy this stuff. You know, people. I mean, the price the customer or the consumer is willing to pay is changing. So all these things are, you know, what we term expensive now because if Facebook is willing to pay the amount of course, there's a way of them recouping those costs back. You know, to make sure that you know at least they get the bang for their buck. You know, so these things are. It's a dual supply chain industry is revolutionizing in such a way and in such a manner that it's not only touching the marketing aspect, it's also touching the consumer aspect, the consumer psychology, and all those kind of things. So, like I said, I mean, in the US today, I don't know if that is the case in Canada. People, if you order something in the morning, you get it the same day in a few hours. You know, people don't even. And literally, we had a discussion yesterday on a panel, like, what's going to be the future of brick and mortar? I said, the way things are going, I don't even know. Even to religious houses, they're actually predicting the next 20 to 30 years, everything's going to be practically online, you know? So these things it's quite mind-boggling and changing, but we just have to adapt to times. And though, like Mr. Oke said, like, it might not be full-blown, like, you know, adapting to the cost issue, but the way these guys are changing. Oracle is following the same as well. Microsoft is following the same as well. Though they are not too crazy about the cost, but a lot of some of the elements are actually the same. So it just once they perfect out those things, it's gonna change the way we view supply chain. Period. And I'm telling you, these things is involving supply chain, knowing how to code, understanding machine learning, building models, and using data. And that is how they're able to come because some of the data they were spitting out is just mind-boggling for me. And these are from their supply chain analysts.
To open it up to other, so we might want to ask questions. I know there is Dolapo there. There is yesterday there is see there are still the other. I think we're complete today. There is Sean as well. So if you do have questions regarding what we have been saying so far, I would like you guys to just there's a tool there that you could use to raise up your hand, and I would open up the mic for you. Okay, so we've had a lot of discussions today for those who didn't make it on time, but we talk about the artificial intelligence. We actually talk about the fact that the supply chain model as we know it, the linear supply chain model, what you call the value chain, it's obsolete. And what we are seeing, the emerging industry, usually called the industry 4.0, is actually going to be digital, which means that the supply chain that we know will change. It's already happening. I read his book that the book that you showed in the WhatsApp, where they talked about the Ant Financial, one of the companies that is actually revolutionizing the industry there in China. Where it boils down to what we call the network effects. that the supply chain is no longer linear and it's now a network, network
It
of
is. It
different
is.
industries. So that is
And
what we're going to be dealing with.
uh, and so because of this issue of everything is going digital, the digital footprint and whatnot, is actually changing the kind of profession that is coming out of that is now open to supply chain. I mentioned earlier in our discussion that a lot of things are changing as per the kind of work that is coming out. I was reading that so many folks, they call it the service-based, jobs that are coming out now. Actually, they are supporting supply chain industries. That means a lot of all these organizations are thinking of how to start changing their digital footprint. So companies are now hiring, Python engineers, programmers. They're now hiring, supply chain analysts that has data science. They have machine learning engineers. They have data engineers. They have data scientists, and all these things they are opening up in all wide areas of work within supply chain industry. And more importantly, because everything is now going digital, there's another aspect of it that people are not looking into, which is the area of cybersecurity. And that is going to be quite huge in the nearest future. And if you can actually position yourself, because you already have the knowledge, you already have the knowledge, the base knowledge of supply chain, you actually can help in actually providing security, because everything that's going to be doing, the data is now becoming the new oil. I mean, the way we're going to be training online is going to be through the use of data, and our ability to protect the data is going to be crucial and actually value driven for a lot of organizations. So if you start looking into, because this is part of being relevant, if you want to be relevant for the next 20 to 40 years in this industry of supply chain, we'll have to morph as these things is changing. So if you're actually looking into areas of where you can be of impact, cybersecurity is another way. I'm telling you, things are changing with all these cyber attacks going on from different, like I said, this issue of network supply chain presents so many challenges, so many constraints, and ability to actually position one over there can be a huge advantage down the line. For example, look at what has been going on over in the Middle East. Imagine yourself as a cybersecurity analyst for a company over there, making sure that those data that you pass in is being protected. It goes a long way, and because the data is going to be the base of what you use for your modeling. It's going to be the base for what you use for machine learning, training different models. So those data has to be protected. And the issue of cybersecurity is going to be huge in the nearest future. And then, of course, with this issue of blockchain and everything coming up and digital currencies, all these things is going to require cybersecurity. So, and the thing about artificial intelligence that I actually didn't mention was that it's only effective because the coders, the programmers, the engineers can do the best they can, but they need people with the industry knowledge to be able to point them in the right direction. So this whole thing, the tech side of it, cannot work in a vacuum. It needs people with knowledge to kind of argument it. So, for example, if they want to come up with a solution, they will need somebody that knows the thing very well to be able to tell them this is what the right looks like, and they'll be able to form or develop different models to match that. So as I will employ all of us, all including myself, I'm doing the same. I'm reading more on artificial intelligence, getting more involved, going to different shows, and see how much permutation is going on. You'll be surprised what kind of crazy solutions are out there with the use of artificial intelligence. But we shouldn't look at it as if this is the end of the world for us, but it's the way to kind of retool ourselves and reinvent ourselves as a supply chain professionals. If what you've done before is buying and doing all kind of the basic or what to call basic procurement and all this other stuff, logistics. So it's high time for us to go back to school and retool ourselves. Is it that whatever interests us in this line of artificial intelligence, we should pick at it. And I'm telling you, the jobs are picking up. But I'm telling you, the nearest 10 to 15 years is going to be awesome because those people that are prepared for it will actually harness and harvest a lot out of this thing. So I'm seeing the changes, and actually the Dallas Metroplex where I stay is just enormous. The new supply chain guy, actually, there's a kid that interned at my business last year as a supply chain guy, and by the time he finished about 3 months in the summer, he goes to Purdue University. Then it changed. It changed his major he did more of, artificial intelligence kind of, programming and everything. Now, by the time he's graduating in summer, he has about 7 jobs already, and he turned down actually 5 of it. He's going to be working for Oracle in Austin. It's just, I'm telling you, once you equip yourself with necessary tools, it changes the dynamics of things. You kind of increase your own value as well as professionals. And I will employ each and every one of us, because for me, when I go to all these panels and all these conferences and I speak on this, people will be thinking I've been doing this for long, but I understand where this thing is coming out. We mentioned earlier, when we map our supply chain, artificial intelligence might not work for every part of our supply chain, but there are certain areas that it will be of a huge advantage. We just have to, as a professional, okay, where in my mapping of my chain will artificial intelligence be the most productive out of it, and then and the rest. So it's not going to be like the whole supply chain has to be artificial intelligence. There's a certain critical point that will change, revolutionize the whole process. And it can be a life-changing event for any organization. So I want us to take this as a challenge. I'm very passionate about this because it creates more jobs. I've seen people's life changing in the last 6 months because they embrace this. You learn data science, you learn how to code, you learn Python, and you start a job within 3 months. You'll be like, wow, this is what this thing can be done. Especially you already have the knowledge already embedded in you. All you have to see is the possibility of what this thing can do, and then you yourself, you'll just be producing solutions on a daily basis. So I've seen this work, and I know it's going to continue to work. So whatever you are in your career, I will employ each and every one of us to go back and retool ourselves. Last year, I spent some money, I went to class to study data science for 3 months. I'm not the best in it, but at least I know enough to be dangerous, be able to speak intelligently, at least from the management perspective, because that is what is needed. So I can't say much. Hopefully, I'll be able to sow some seed in you as per taking that extra leap if you really want to be productive and stay relevant in supply chain in the nearest future.
I appreciate your time, and you know what? Guess what? If you still have a question pertaining to the artificial intelligence and any other disruptive technology out there that you think you have a question, just raise up your hand here. There's a way to do that. You probably will see an hand tool that you can press. So thanks so much for that information. I actually scribbled some things down here in terms of the type of activity that a procurement data analyst will be involved in and the type of skills to actually learn. So for a procurement data analyst, some of the things that you will be doing will be automating the processes of collecting, cleaning, classifying, and analyzing expenditure data in an organization. These type of data that are acquired, like Adebayo mentioned earlier, that these data are now the new assets for any organization, and that's why it becomes very critical, even in supply chain process. So we would have people that will now be playing that critical role of doing this data stuff. So spend analytics is one application area which will be impacted. Of course, strategic sourcing, contract analytics, and also, as Adebayo mentioned earlier, risk management is very, very critical in supply chain, as you may know, supplier risk and all of that. When you have artificial intelligence, is able to collect data and even to use this data in your supplier selection process. A lot of what we have right now where we are doing supplier selection is really based on some historical information that you can garner, but guess what? We are limited by, our the kind of scope, maybe upstream and downstream, that we can look at. But now we're talking about a network, a cognitive nexus. That is what the new supply chain is, and for you to be able to process that amount of information, which they call big data, of course, is only the artificial intelligence that can make a sense of those type of information. to then provide it for our use. So like we were saying all this while, it's not about really eliminating supply chain professional from the industry, but it is about how do we use this technology to actually enhance how we add value to our organization. And this is what this is really all about. Some trends already in the industry, of course, you probably know some of this, where instances where we already have artificial intelligence in use. We have Alexa. I know some of you probably know that there's the Echo machine that actually, if you speak to, if you have this conversational AI is what they call this type of AI instances. Also, SAP. Hello. Also, SAP has one called the SAP Copilot. I actually posted one there where they had that's in this channel, the Innovations Month channel here, where SAP actually demonstrated how that tool works. So yeah, those are some instances, and I know you know about chatbots too. There's also Amazon.
Chatbots, yeah.
Yeah, they are very good in all these areas. So we're basically we're not competing with this artificial intelligence. It's just going to be enhancing our ability to deliver to our organization.
There's chatbot engineer. There's so much that is opening up for, especially if you have the knowledge that we already have as supply chain professionals. So you just have to have, when you know in just a little bit of technology with it, you become a rock star. Because a lot of all these engineers that are coming out of school, they can code, they can do all this. Actually, matter of fact, as you don't really need to know how to code. You just know how to understand what coding does to the already existing knowledge, and that is quite powerful and profound. You know, and like I said, chatbot engineer, usually chatbot engineer in the supply chain industry. I mean, that could be mind blowing. So there's so much that could be done, and for this a lot because the pushing into it. If we can just, and I know the chorus that is going on outside is AI is coming to take all of us, all our jobs and whatnot. But actually, it's not. It's just helping us to be better at what we are doing.
Exactly. Thanks so much. Well, if no one has any further contribution or questions to ask here, I probably will call this a day. But what I will try to do is to see how I can put this information that we've gained here together to see how that will help for any other future deliberation. Thanks so much, Adebayo Adeleke. And if you haven't connected with
thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you haven't connected with him, he's on the WhatsApp group. He's also on LinkedIn, of course. Just type in his name. Okay, then thanks, guys. So next week we'll continue this discussion next week. We're gonna be looking at procurement analytics. Now that we know, okay, what are the type of skills that we need to acquire, then we'll then dive deep into what data analytics and procurement analytics entails. I'll try as much as possible to see if I can bring an expert in that area. I have two that I'm already talking to. And we'll see how we can schedule that, either a webinar for the whole group so that everybody can, can participate all in our focus. Thanks. Okay, bye for now, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.